suis en allée de présenter-vous avec la biographie de Ivan Myro Fisher. Et cette biographie a été écrite par Michael Dahl et je vais le lire pour vous. Ivan Myro Fisher was born on November 30th, 1894 at Fairhall, Killarney, Manitoba. His mother died of complications from giving birth to him, so Ivan was then adopted by his grandparents, Frederick and Mary Jane Fisher, who were both originally from London, England. The Fisher family had already experienced struggles before moving to a homestead in Manitoba. Their general store business in Ontario had gone bankrupt after too many of Mr. Fisher's customers found themselves unable to pay him. The Manitoba farm did not work out very well either. Hence, not long after Ivan was born, the family moved to Great Falls, Manitoba. In 1904, when Ivan was 9 years old, his grandfather and father, both named Fred, bought a heavily timbered half-section of land, which is 320 acres, in the Poplar Ridge district east of Red Deer, along what is now Highway 11A. The hill on which the farm was located is still known locally as Fisher's Hill. Not long after the family settled on the new farm, Ivan's grandfather had his leg shatter when one of the trees he was clearing fell on him. Dr. Richard Parsons was able to save the leg, but Fred Fisher Sr. had a long convalescence after the accident. Fishers were strong believers in education. They helped spearhead the creation of the first Poplar Ridge School shortly after they arrived in the district. Ivan's father was the first chair of the Poplar Ridge School Board, while his grandfather was the first secretary-treasurer. After Ivan finished his primary grades at Poplar Ridge, since he was a strong student, his grandparents moved into Red Deer so that he could attend high school. After graduation, Ivan was able to secure a job with the Bank of Commerce at Grantham, Alberta. He was soon transferred to the branch in Monitor, Alberta. In October 1915, Ivan decided to enlist with the 51st Battalion, Canadian Expeditionary Force. He was soon overseas. His uncle Arthur enlisted in December 1914 in British Columbia in the 2nd Canadian Mounted Rifles and also served overseas. Ivan's father Fred enlisted in July 1915 in the Canadian Army Medical Corps and went overseas. He worked with the Red Cross in England and as a stretcher bearer in France. He was injured when an exploding shell blew him into a dugout. He was then reassigned to work in a hospital some distance from the front lines in France. Meanwhile, Ivan was promoted to the position of Lance Corporal and served more than 14 months in the trenches without leave. In August 1917, he was part of the Battle of Hill 70 near Lens, France, which was primarily a diversionary attack to draw German soldiers away from the Third Battle of the. On the morning of August 16, 1917, he crossed the enemy artillery barrage 8 times, carrying ammunition for his fellow Canadians. He was then seriously wounded. He died later that day from his wounds. Ivan was recommended for a Distinguished Conduct Medal for his bravery that morning. However, because of a frequent aversion by the military command to posthumous decorations, the medal was never awarded. Ivan is buried in the communal cemetery at the nearby village of Neuilly on August 17, 1917. Ivan's father was able to visit the cemetery not long after Ivan was buried there. He went back after heavy fighting in the area during the German Spring Offensive of 1918. In a poignant letter home to his parents on August 17, 1918, Fred Jr. wrote, "I do not like the place poor Ivan is buried in. I will have him removed after the war if I live to get through it myself. As old Fritz," which are the Germans, "has the town and the graveyard disfigured and scarred out of all reason, compared to when I saw it first in 1917. As you know, I saw it after the advance of old Fritz in the early part of 1918, and his damnable shells have made the place a sight. I have not seen Arthur since June last, or nearly 2 months ago, but I'm almost sure the war hasn't done him or me any good. But we must be thankful to be alive. for I tell you I have nearly gone west 2 or 3 times. Going west would be a euphemism for being wounded or killed, as the wounded were sent west to hospitals in France, England, or back in Canada, and the dead were said to have gone west to the sunset. Fred's comments were borne out after the war. He lived for 2 years, but then died of a sudden cerebral hemorrhage. Arthur also returned from the war in poor health. He lived to be more than 80 years old, but his hearing had been destroyed when, like Fred, he had been blown into a dugout by shell fire. Meanwhile, Ivan's grandmother was devastated by the news of his death. She had a breakdown and totally lost her memory. After many poor years of health, she passed away in March 1924 and is buried in the Red Deer Cemetery. Among the family's enduring keepsakes were 2 pressed Flanders Fields poppies, which were picked from Ivan's cemetery and sent to the family